It is a legendary nightmare Hydra from the plane of Ikoria. Lurking among the peat bogs of Indother, this many-headed nightmare Hydra oozes toxins from every pore. Welcome. MTG Commander Spotlight, Zaxara, the Exemplary. Zaxara is a 4-to-cast legendary nightmare Hydra with Death Touch. Activated ability of tap, add 2 mana of any one color, and whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, create a 0/0 green Hydra creature token, then put X+1/+1 counters on it. What is our strategy? First, we need Zaxara to go out early. Next we'll be ramping lands, so that we can cast big spells and generates us Hydra tokens. After generating tons of Hydra tokens, we will defeat our enemies with combat damage. Decklist composition. Here we organize our deck into composition that compels us the right cards to our deck. Okay, let's walk through to the decklist. Mana ramps? First, we have Elementalist's Palette. This mana ramp synergies well with our commander. By casting X casting cost spells, it gains a 2 charge counters. Add 1 colorless mana for each charge counter on it. Only spend this on costs that contain X on it. The other ability is to add mana of any kind. Having this, we can produce huge Hydra tokens when casting X spells with our commander on the field. Next, we have Everflowing Chalice, a 0-to-cast mana artifact within the ability of Multi-Kicker 2. Enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. Tap, add colorless mana for each charge counter on it, giving us more mana to cast huge X spells. Next is Astral Cornucopia. Enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it, where X, it's the casting cost. Tap, choose a color. Add 1 mana of that color for each charge counters on it. By casting this mana artifact, we create a Hydra when our commander is on the battlefield. We have Animist's Awakening. Reveal the top X cards of your library. Put all land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library, in a random order. Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, untap those lands. This could give more lands on our battlefield. Next, we have Mana Bloom, a mana enchantment with an ability of Mana Bloom enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it. Remove a charge counter from Mana Bloom, add 1 mana of any color. Activate only once each turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Mana Bloom has no charge counters on it, return it to its owner's hand. A repeatable mana source. These cards can fix our mana colors and ramping us more lands. These cards are Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Path to the Festival, Circuitous Route, and Migration Path. Let's proceed to draw engines. First, we have passive draw card engines, and these are Colossal Majesty that at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have a creature with 4 or greater, draw a card. Next is Triumph of Ferocity. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the creature with the greatest power or tide, draw a card. Next, we have Garak's Uprising. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with a power of 4 or greater, draw a card. Next ability is creatures you control have Trample. Our Hydra tokens gaining Trample. Easily to pass through and taking combat damage. Next ability is whenever a creature with 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Next, we have Mass Draw X cards, and these are Mindspring and Commander's Insight. By paying X and casting cost, you will draw a ton of cards and creating huge Hydras. Next, we have Bred for the Hunt. With an ability of whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. With your Hydra tokens that deals damage to an opponent, you will draw a ton of cards. Next, we have a creature, and it is Thunderous Snapper. A 4-to-cast Turtle, with an ability of whenever you cast A with a converted mana cost of 5 or greater, draw a card. Next is a 3-to-cast Planeswalker. She is Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner. With an ability of whenever a creature with a power of 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. You can -1 her, untap target permanent. Next, we have cards that draw us cards and add us additional land cards. These are Growth Spiral, and Eureka Moment. Next we have single target removals. First, we have Death Sprout, which destroys target creature and searches a basic land and put it on the battlefield. Next, we have Putrefy, destroy target artifact or creature and it cannot be regenerated. These cards are removals but in the form of -X counters. First we have Erebus's Intervention. Choose one, target creature gets -X and you gain X life, or exile up to twice X target cards from graveyards. Next we have Deathwind, target creature gets -X. Next are counterspells cards that still generates us huge hydras when our commander is on the battlefield, and these are Condescend that can scry us, Spell Burst but has buyback ability, and Clash of Wills. Next are cards that can destroy an artifact or an enchantment, and these are Appetite for the Unnatural that gains us 2 life, Broken Bond that can play us additional land this turn, and Frozen Grip that has an ability of split second. Let's proceed to board wipes. These cards will wipe the board, and generating us huge hydras when our commander is on the battlefield. First, we have Curse of the Swine, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled, its controller creates a 2/2 green board token. Next card is Gaze of Granite, destroy each no-land permanent with mana value of X or less. Next card is Displacement Wave, return all non-land permanent with converted mana cost of X or less to their owner's hands. Next, we have Forced March, destroy all creatures with a converted mana cost X or less. Next we have the Standalones. The next cards are Standalone Hydra creatures, and when your commander is on the battlefield we create Hydra tokens too. We have Hungering Hydra, enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. Hungering Hydra can't be blocked more than one creature, and when Hungering Hydra is dealt damage, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. The next card is Voracious Hydra, with an ability of Trample, and when it enters to the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. There is one more ability, when Voracious Hydra enters the battlefield, choose one, double the number +1/+1 counters on Voracious Hydra, or Voracious Hydra fights target creature you don't control. Next card is Genesis Hydra, when you cast this spell, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle the rest into your library. Genesis Hydra enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. With this you can find answers to fasten our victory. Next Hydra card is Ren's Run Hydra, it has reach, and whenever it enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. There is another ability, Reinforce X, pay X and 2 green mana, discard Ren's Run Hydra. Put X+1/+1 counters on target creature. This could be a situational card or a massive creature on the battlefield. Vastwood Hydra enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. When Vastwood Hydra dies, you may distribute a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on Vastwood Hydra among any number of creatures you control. With the right amount of counters, we will distribute it to our creatures on the battlefield. The next card is Feral Hydra. Feral Hydra enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. Pay 3 colorless, put a +1/+1 counter Feral Hydra. Any player may activate this ability. It would be a combat trick to take out a player. Next is Capricopian, when it enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. Pay 2 colorless, put a +1/+1 counter on Capricopian, then you may reselect which player Capricopian is attacking. Only the player Capricopian is attacking may activate this ability, and only during the Declare Attacker's step. A political way to deal with your opponents. Let's proceed to Enhancers. Next cards that can enhance and mutate our Hydra tokens. First, we have Corpsejack Menace. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. Next is Winding Constrictor. If one or more counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1 of each of those kinds of counters are put on that permanent instead. If you would get one or more counters, you get that many +1 of each of those kinds of counters instead. The next card is Master Biomancer. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to Master Biomancer's power, and as a mutant in addition to its other types. With these cards, we are easily pump our Hydra tokens and creatures. Next, we have Combined Chrysalis. Creature tokens you control have flying. Pay 2, green and blue mana, tap, sacrifice a token, create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Activate only as a sorcery. Mutating our Hydra tokens by gaining flight. This will be easy to take down our opponents. Next, we have Tribal Unity and Biomass Mutation, pumping and changing our Hydra tokens to the most terrifying Hydras in the battlefield. One of our win cons of our deck. Next is an artifact card, making our commander support to pump our Hydra tokens, and this is Dragon Throne of Tarkir. Equipped creature gains Defender and pay 2 and tap. Other creatures you control gain Trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. with an equip cost of 3. Next is equipment that can protect our key creatures, and that is winged boots. Equipped creature gains flying and ward 4. Proceeding to our enablers. First, we have Nelia's Intervention. Choose one, search your library for up to X land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle, or Nelia's Intervention deals twice X damage to each creature with flying. By having this we can draw many lands and putting it to the battlefield to provide us more mana or killing flying creatures. Next card is Villainous Wealth. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana costs. Getting something on our opponent's top cards that can help us on our play. Next card is Wildest Dreams. Return X target cards from your graveyard to your hand. Exile Wildest Dreams. Having this card we can recast our X spells and creating Hydra army once more. Next card is Profane Command. Choose 2, target player loses X life, or return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or target creature gets -X until end of turn, or up to X target creatures gain fear until end of turn. So many options, but choose wisely and giving us the victory. Next, we have Full Flowering. Populate X times. Creating an army of Hydra tokens that overstand our opponents. The next card is Frontier Siege. As Frontier Siege enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. Khans, at the beginning of each of your main phases, add 2 green mana. Or Dragons, whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. We will be choosing Khans, so that adding more mana. Next is an additional removal, and it is Battle at the Bridge. This card has Improvise. Next ability is target creature gets -X until end of turn. You gain X life by removing a creature and gaining us tons of life. Next, we have manipulation cards, and these cards are Entrancing Melody, Mass Manipulation, and Dominate. These cards can gain control of opponent's creatures and use them to our advantage. Next is Gelatinous Genesis that can create a massive army of Ooze tokens. Next is Thassa's Intervention. Choose one, look at the top X cards on your library and put 2 of them in your hand, or counter target spell unless its controller pays X. We are almost done. Let's proceed. We are almost done, but first, what is our land composition? Let's proceed. First we have 14 pieces of forest, 9 pieces of islands, and 9 pieces of swamps. Next card is one of each, and these are Dimmer Guildgate, Evolving Wilds, Golgari Guildgate, Simic Guildgate, and Terramorphic Expanse. The total cost is summed up through TCG Player, and the total cost is $32.15. I would like to thank you all for watching. Please give a like. Press the subscribe button for more updates and share this video to your friends who loves MTG. Once again, thank you.